Optimistic beats.
Got my Cali booted up, yeah, it's time to hack. Got the IP in scope, now I attack. You likely don't know I wear a black hat. Where's your SQL database? Let me grab that. And all the people in the place saying play that. Even if your password's hashed, I'm gonna crack that. Let me go and pass that back with the fast track. We can take it slow or fast, I got the hash cat. Even if it doesn't last, I'm gonna grab that. Every kind of persistence and I will come back. Responders gonna listen and I'll get that call back. Someone tell Eminem I'll never fall flat. Cause unlike all of them, I don't sound whack. I can rap, I can hack, yeah, all that. Cause unlike all of them, I don't sound whack. I can rap, I can hack, yeah, all that. Got the Cali booted up in my black hoodie on. Black hoodie on, black hoodie on. Got the Cali booted up in my black hoodie on. Get your terminals up as we listen to the song. Got the Cali booted up in my black hoodie on. Black hoodie on, black hoodie on. Got the Cali booted up in my black hoodie on. Get your terminals up as we listen to the song. This verse is for the career coaches. I really hope it hurts, cause y'all are the real vultures. You're lining up your purse, that doesn't fit our culture. You're getting rich off the poor, you're a poser. I told ya, if you're good, you don't need the cash. Now you're gonna feel my wrath. I just want you to see the fact that more than half these acts are just a money trap. So I will trash in raps, I don't want none of that. And I will smash with passion every scummy act. If you react with madness, you can run it back. And if you disagree, your thinking's incomplete, because they're preying on the noobs in our industry. And here's what we can do to bring their misery. We can make them feel accessible for you and me. All the content that we make, we do for free.
And
Whoa, wrong screen. There we go. Now we are live. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Hacksmart Live. Apologize for the black screen. I'm used to just sharing my face, and when I do interviews, all the settings are different. But for all of you joining, hey, super excited to have you here. It's an honor for me, and I think a treat for all of you. I am here with the one and only Christophe Limpalair. Did I say that right? Did I mess up your name?
No, you got it. Great job.
Close enough? Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you for being on the stream. And for those of you watching, if you could just let me know in the comments if anything sounds off, if anything looks off. I am a one-man production team as well as the person doing the interview. So if anything does look or sound off to you guys, let me know and I will do my best to get it fixed. A few things before we dive into it. One is I want to hear from you. So if you have questions about cloud security, in particular AWS or careers in cloud security, or about Cybr as a platform, or about Kristoff's background, let me know in the comments. I am doing my best to monitor the chat in all three different platforms, which is the other thing. You can watch this on Twitch, YouTube, or LinkedIn. So we are live on all three platforms. You can join on whichever one works best for you. And finally, towards the end of the stream, we will also be doing a giveaway courtesy of Chris Whitrock. We are giving away two 3-month premium licenses to the Cybr platform. And if you're like, I don't know what Cybr is, hey, that's what we're going to talk about. But before we dive into it, Christophe, let's begin with the classic elevator question. If we had never met, you only had a few minutes to introduce yourself, who are you?
That's a question I struggle with all the time. And by the way, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And putting on productions like this, I've tried a couple of times. It's very complex and complicated and hard to do. So mad respect being a one-person crew pulling this off. But to answer your question, I would say I'm a beer maker enthusiast. I'm a wannabe ski pro, maybe a half decent tech guy. Right? It's just, but all joking aside, I'm just somebody that loves learning, and it doesn't even have to just be tech. I love learning about tech stuff, but also outside of tech. As long as I'm constantly learning something new, it keeps me interested and keeps me going, and I'm really passionate about that. And then once I've built up enough experience, I love to be able to turn around and share what I've learned back with the community. So in a nutshell, that's probably how I would describe myself.
Amazing. And I'm sure you have a similar issue that, at least I have this issue. I'm sure a lot of people watching this have it as well. I also love learning. I love learning new things. But in cybersecurity and cloud security in particular, it's like as soon as you learn one thing, you realize, wow, there's these 100 things that I do not know. AWS just changed the name of like 15 different services to names that do not make any sense in the first place. How do you fight against that like imposter syndrome? There's always more to learn. How do you stay to the ground without being discouraged, basically?
That's an amazing question. It's an issue that I see very regularly. So if you're feeling that way, pretty much probably 90% of people in tech, if not more, feel the same way. So hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better. But and literally just yesterday, I had to fix an issue in some of my content because AWS had just released a brand new feature in their network firewall. And so I had to go through and spend half an hour and update my content because it was no longer accurate. So as a content creator, I feel that pain very much on a monthly basis. But I think the main piece of advice that I usually give when somebody is struggling with that is to try to stop having FOMO, fear of missing out, and try to pick an area that you are primarily interested in and that you can focus on, because it's impossible to hit every single IT topic. IT is so broad. Even cybersecurity is massively broad. And so if you're trying to learn everything under the sun that has to do with cybersecurity, it's physically not possible. You will not succeed. It's just not doable. And so if you're able to narrow that down a little bit, which for me is cloud security and even more specifically AWS security, that helps a lot, because now I can focus on maybe subscribing to newsletters related to AWS security, maybe having RSS feeds for their updates and podcasts, things like that. And so now I'm getting a feed that's not overwhelming on a weekly basis, and that helps me stay up to date and put up to date on what's going on in the cloud security space. So my top tip advice would be try to be a little bit more focused and narrow down your discipline.
That's wisdom. And just for context, how long have you been around the IT cybersecurity cloud industry?
Yeah, you had asked me that yesterday, and so I was trying to think through, and I did a little bit of math this morning, and I think it's somewhere between 19 to 20 years, which, wow. I'm fairly young, so I got started very young in IT, and we can talk a little bit more about that if you want. But yeah, it's about 19 years.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like, how did you get started? What are some key people, key resources, key moments? Would love to just hear more of your personal journey there.
So in short, long story short, I was born and raised in France and I moved to the United States when I was about 11, 12 years old. And I'm not a very social person. I'm fairly introverted. So when I moved, I lost all of my friends that I had made at that young age. And I was not the guy that would go out and just say, "Hey, I'm Christophe. Nice to meet you. Let's be friends." I would just stay in my corner. I would stay home and I just couldn't make friends. And so I turned to computers. I turned to the internet and I met a lot of guys and gals who I would play video games with, and they had a lot more expertise and knowledge than I did. And so I started to learn from them basic things like HTML, CSS, then a lot of PHP back when you didn't have as many frameworks, JavaScript when back when jQuery was massive and the main library used. And so that's kind of how I got my start, started building websites for different gaming clans, for businesses. And that's kind of how I cut my teeth in tech. And that's why I got started so young, because I didn't have anything else to do. I was bored, and that's how I met friends. I was much more comfortable meeting friends online than in person. So that's how it happened.
And I'm sure a lot of people watching, I know myself, I resonate with that. And I'm just curious, dude, what games did you start out at with this technology journey?
I don't even want to know how many hours I sunk into StarCraft 1. It was just unbelievable. Oh, I love StarCraft. And then after that, StarCraft 2. I had to stop playing StarCraft 2 because it was making me a mean person. I was getting way too competitive and it was not good for my mental health. So, yeah, oh, StarCraft all the way. Incredible games. They crushed that game platform. Yeah.
And did you get interested in cybersecurity or even hacking in the game side? I know a lot of people got into games, and then you have that curiosity, like, what is hacks? For me, it was RuneScape, right? Did you ever play RuneScape growing up at all?
I know of it, obviously, but no, I never played it.
You never played it. That was my introduction to, like, I remember I was like 11 years old, right? And one of the things you tell people on RuneScape is, hey, they made this update that if you type your password, it comes up as asterisks. Like, look, I type my password and it just comes up as asterisks, right? And you have these other 11-year-olds, they type in their password and very quickly you log into their account, you drop their gear, you log back into your account, you take all their stuff. Like, that was my introduction. That was my only, like, black hat hacking, was being a RuneScape scammer. But I'm curious, in your own gaming journey, were you introduced to cybersecurity in that way, or was it more on the development side of things that you got that first taste playing StarCraft and working with those clans?
A little bit of both, and not so much on the game hacking side, meaning I was not smart enough to be able to look at memory and understand how to create hacking or hacks for games like that. That was above my brain level and capacity. But the interesting about StarCraft 1 is they had, I don't know if you ever played it or not, but they had these chat channels. So if you wanted to play multiplayer, you would log into their servers, and it was basically like IRC. In fact, it might have been like an abstraction layer above IRC, where Blizzard, the makers of StarCraft, added this little beautiful or pretty little GUI layer on top of that. But you had these chat channels, and so you could create gaming clans. And originally, Blizzard meant for that to be gaming clans that played StarCraft 1 competitively. But us being the internet geeks that we were, we quickly figured out that we could create bots. And also back then they used a lot of keys, right? Gaming keys. And so you'd buy a CD, you'd get the key, and that's how you got access to the game. People quickly found out what the algorithms were for some of those keys. And so we were able to crack and generate keys on the fly. And then we would be able to use proxies to basically launch attacks against other gaming clans and do like load attacks, flood attacks, basically DDoS, but for StarCraft 1. And that quickly then escalated to attacking their websites, defacing their websites. And so that, to answer your question, that's kind of how I was forced to learn or get involved in cybersec, because I would build these websites, these very basic websites, and they would get hacked. Somebody would get into the database, they'd put really nasty stuff on the website, and we'd have to go clean it up. But I would go, okay, well, I guess I don't know what I'm doing because I don't understand how they're able to get into the database that I designed. What am I doing wrong? And back then there weren't very many learning resources for this stuff. So plus I was young, I was kind of lazy. And so I eventually had to try and figure out and realize, oh, I've got vulnerabilities in my PHP code here. There's a SQL injection vulnerability here, cross-site scripting, whatever it was at the time. And here's how I prevent that. Here's how I fix that. So it was more out of necessity across multiple different platforms.
Dude, that is so cool. And those early training platforms, like the one that comes to mind for me, I remember when I was first getting into it, was hackthisSite.org. Did you ever use hackthisSite.org? I feel like everyone has used that, right? What's your experience with that website? Just out of curiosity.
That this is taking me back, and my memory's not the best, but I remember, I think it was hackthisite.org, right? It was kind of like, have you heard of flaws.cloud? It was
Yeah.
kind of like that model where, yeah, you go on there and there's these different levels that you have to progress through, and you get stuck with it. And so, like I said, I was kind of lazy and impatient. So I'd go to my friends, I'd get stuck and be like, hey, how do I get past this level? And then I would cheat a little bit and get past the level. But this is taking me back. I'll have to see if I can go back and look at some of the I think I've lost a lot of my hard drives from that time, unfortunately. And back then we didn't really use cloud storage, so probably don't have a whole lot of the scripts and things that I did back then. But I'll have to dig through my archives and see if I can find some historical data from that.
Amazing, dude. And the website's still around. Like, it still looks like it did back in the early 2000s. They have like basic challenges, realistic challenges, but that's where I really dug in and began learning some of that stuff. Before we had platforms like Cybr, which I want to spend a lot of time talking about that, but I'm also interested in your overall journey, because what's unique about you is often when people are highly technical, which I think you are highly technical, they're not very business conscious, right? They're not good at starting businesses, being an entrepreneur, but you're both. You're highly technical, and you've also started multiple businesses leading up to Cybr. So share with us a few of those businesses you started and how the lessons you learned from those have influenced Cybr as a whole.
Absolutely. So one of the earliest businesses, well, so growing up, right, when I was about 12 or so, I started learning. After that, I would unofficially, I didn't really have a business, but I would unofficially get hired to do projects, make websites for businesses, things like that. And so I kind of dipped my toes into, here's how I can make a little bit of money on the side on my own accord without being a full-time salary, right? And so I think early on that really taught me that that was a possibility, and some people don't realize that's a possibility, or maybe they're just intimidated by it and they can't do it. And so that led me to then joining this other company. It didn't end up working out. You know, I joined this other guy. He had a vision, and I helped him build some of the technical stuff. And that was my first startup failure, and I learned quite a bit from that. So moving on from that failure, then I decided to launch a company called Scale Your Code. And so that kind of started out as a podcast, and we can talk a little bit more about that if you want. But started out as a podcast, and again, reinforcing that belief of I can make money doing my own thing, because I would just call up these businesses and say, hey, I'm interviewing these really smart guys from Stack Overflow, from TwitPic, from, I don't even remember, CodePen, all these big websites. I'm interviewing their CTOs, and they're going to talk about how they built the website, how they keep it running, how they secure it. Would you like to sponsor the show? They'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Here's $200. Here's $500. And I'm like, I'm making money just out of thin air. This is incredible. I love it. And it's not that much money, right? But when you make $200 of your own accord, you're just blown away the first time it happens. And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun. Ended up building that business for a couple of years. And then that business was acquired by a company called Linux Academy. And so I joined Linux Academy fairly early on. I didn't help found it, right? I wasn't a creator of it, but I joined as employee number 6. We were making about 4 million, 3 million, 4 million a year at that point, and then stayed there for about 4 years, helped build that company into a $40 million a year business, 200 employees. And then we got acquired and merged with our closest competitor, A Cloud Guru, and overnight grew into like a 600 person company. And then just, I left shortly after that, but spent a little bit of time with the ACG crew, and then decided it was time to start Cybr.
Dude, that's amazing. And there's a lot of things on the business side of things that I think you can learn lessons the hard way. So I want you to speak for a moment to those who maybe are interested in being entrepreneurs, are interested in starting their own tech business. Maybe it's a for-profit thing, like offering a service that way. Maybe it's an educational thing. But overall, they want to start some type of business, some type of service offering, but they have very little business experience. What are some pitfalls that maybe you experienced the hard way and that you would offer just a word of advice or wisdom for them?
There's a lot we could talk. We could have multiple podcasts on this topic alone, I think. So if I were to narrow it down, I would probably just say, and you hear this sometimes, but I think it's underrated how incredibly hard it is to build a business from scratch, from thin air, and to get actual customer traction. It's just so hard. The failure rate is extremely high. And so if you want to try it, just keep that in mind, and have a backup plan. And don't take it personally if it doesn't work out. It's not because it doesn't mean that you did a bad job necessarily. It doesn't mean that you suck at business. It just maybe didn't work out that time, and maybe there's a better business in your future. But the other thing, and I think we're starting to see more influencers talking about this as well, and something that I'm starting to realize too is we have a lot of businesses, established businesses from the boomer generation where they're planning on retiring soon. And so as another option, you could always look at purchasing some of those businesses, and you don't need a whole lot of money for that. There's different ways you can finance deals like that. But maybe if you want to dip your toes in it, you can look at that avenue. And if you're interested in cybersecurity, maybe try to find a cybersecurity or IT related business. Maybe they do customer support or tech support, things like that. Maybe approach somebody that's nearing retirement that they're not handing it out to anybody in their family and say, hey, can we work out a deal to where you teach me the ropes, I take over your business, and I help pay for part of your retirement, right? So maybe also considering that aspect of it. There's other hard lessons I've learned along the way, but like I said, if I start talking about that, we might spend a couple hours on the topic, so I don't know.
No, that's totally good. So let's talk about Cybr, right? We've mentioned it a few times. We haven't even shared what it is. So give us like your best pitch, your best explanation. What is Cybr and why is it different than other things offered today?
I would say that Cybr is where you go to build AWS security expertise, and the keyword there being building expertise, practical hands-on expertise. It's also where you can go to find a welcoming and friendly cybersecurity community. And to touch on that and why I emphasize that as well, I think historically and when I was learning, when I was a little bit younger, there was a lot of there's a lot of gatekeeping, and a lot of communities were fairly hostile. And so when I started Cybr, what was extremely important to me was that there would be absolutely none of that in our community. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what your experience is. I don't care what your question is. There's no such thing as a stupid or bad question. And if somebody is going to be mean about you asking that, they're going to get banned from the community. There's just zero tolerance for that. And so I think that's helped grow the community into like, there's now a culture, right? And it's self-selective, and people they'll join and they'll say, this is such a welcoming and friendly community. Thank you for creating this. And that's really important to me. So that's one of the differentiators on the community side. But on the training side, the reason I said build AWS security expertise is because we really focus on the practical side of learning. Yes, we also have certification prep materials, but even in our certification prep material, I really want to try to focus on project-based courses or project-based lessons, hands-on labs, things like that, so that you can walk away from that course or from that lab with practical skills that you can either directly apply on the job, or if you're trying to get that job, you can lean on that in the interview experience, and you can say, yep, no, I know how to use CloudTrail. I know how to use EC2 or secure EC2. I know some attack vectors through identity and access. Like, I'm able to speak to that in technical terms, not just regurgitate for a multiple choice Q&A question. So in a nutshell, I would say that's how we differentiate. We really hyper focus and specialize on AWS security expertise.
Very cool. And maybe a pushback on this from someone who might be watching this is, okay, you offer training for AWS certs. This is one of the things you mentioned. Well, AWS offers training for AWS certs. So why Cybr? Why is there a place for Cybr, even though AWS has their own official training?
And that's a really valid question. I would say try both and see which one fits your learning style a little bit better, because sometimes maybe somebody comes to Cybr and they don't like our teaching style or our training style. Maybe they'll prefer the AWS side. But in my experience, that's usually not the case. Love AWS, love what they're doing. They're not necessarily known for having the best training, even though it's their own product. They're a little bit limited in terms of what they can offer, how they can offer it, and so on. I'm not, because I can do whatever I want with it, right? I'm my own boss in a way, right? And so, actually not in a way, I am my own boss. So I'm able to say, we're going to go deep in this technology. I don't care if they change it every 6 weeks. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to make sure that we have training for this tech. Whereas somebody like AWS, they may not be able to show the console. They may have more restrictions and limitations. And the other part that I would add to that is, because I'm not affiliated with AWS, I can also tell you, they have this native service. I don't recommend using this native service. I recommend using this third-party tool instead if you need XYZ for these requirements. AWS will usually not do that, right? Unless they have partnerships. But then even then, they're more limited in what they can talk about or what they can say about those partnerships. So in general, I would say those are probably the two main reasons why you would consider a platform like Cybr over potentially some of the AWS native training.
Yeah, that's spot on. And I'll maybe say it a little less gentle way. I've done both. And so I just started working through on Cybr, like the flagship course, I think the intro to AWS security, just to get a feel for how it is. So I've made it through, and I was going through it for quite a while last night, going through the course. I'm not through the course all the way, obviously. There's a lot to cover there. But the difference, at least in my opinion, between Cybr and the AWS training, for those of you watching this who maybe have done the AWS training, is that AWS training is just dry, for lack of a better term. There's not a whole lot of hands-on stuff, and it can be hard to follow. It's not the highest quality, in my opinion. When I was going through the training through Cybr, I'm not just saying this because we're on this interview, but it was like a night and day difference. The quality was amazing. The video quality was excellent. The audio quality was excellent. You can see you actually have like a nice microphone and everything, but even just your teaching style, super easy to follow and actually interesting, some of the perspectives that you add. So I'll just throw that out. For those of you who are interested, check it out. And the cool thing about Cybr, maybe you can share on this, let's talk about the specific offerings of Cybr. So we talked about training. Share with us the courses, share with us about the lab, share with us about, I think you have even a roadmap in Notion about different careers. Like, share some of those offerings that Cybr offers.
Absolutely. I should have pulled this up. I don't know why I didn't now that I'm thinking about it, but I ended up going through and I created a whole list of here's how many hours of training we have. Here's how many of those hours are free. Here's how many are paid. What's premium versus not. So maybe I can share that after the fact. But if I remember correctly, we have something like over 60 hours of training material, and that's only counting the video lessons because we use multiple modes of teaching. We have the videos, as you touched on, which thank you, by the way, for the high praises. I really appreciate that. We put a lot of money and time into production quality. So it makes me very happy to hear that you are receiving that quality and seeing it as well. So thank you. But so out of that, roughly half is free content. And I didn't realize it was that much free content. I was like, wait, there's no way I've made this much free, but it is. It's roughly half is free content. And then on top of that, you also have the written transcripts and the written lessons. So I know some people, I love videos, but sometimes I just prefer reading. It's a lot faster, especially if I need something really quick. I can search through Cybr. I can be like, okay, how do I secure EC2 instances? Security groups, let me search that. Or network ACLs, let me search that. And I can pull up and I can quickly skim through the text material, see the commands, see the screenshots, things like that. Then on top of that, we also have hands-on labs. As of right now, we have, I think it's about 24 labs, but we're working on a lot more labs. And they're all focused on AWS or AWS security, and they complement the training material. So as you're going through, as an example, maybe we're talking about building out virtual private clouds, the difference between public, private subnets, NAT gateways, internet gateways, things like that. I'll teach you that up front through video and text. And then I'll give you that lab environment. You click one button, it deploys the lab environment, gives you credentials, you log in, and you build that VPC. You configure that VPC, you modify it, you tweak the configurations, and you see the differences of how it reacts, how it affects security, and so on. And so we're building out as many labs as we can, as quickly as we can, to be able to integrate them throughout the courses so that we can then have more project-based learning, where, as an example, right, one of the courses I'm finishing up right now is called Incident Response with CloudTrail Lake and Athena. This is a project-based course. We start off with nothing in our environment. I give you the infrastructure as code scripts and templates. I give you simulation attack scripts. You can either do that in your own environment, or once we have them, I'm still working on them, you'll be able to launch the Cybr labs and do it for free. You don't have to pay a cent extra. We eat that cost for you as a learner. And so by the end of that course, you'll know how to implement those two technologies to respond to incidents in either your personal account or a corporate account. And so it's very much that kind of project-based hands-on lab, practical learning that I keep repeating myself on, but that's what we fundamentally believe in. So we have courses like that. We have that intro to AWS security. We have intro to AWS enumeration, where you'll learn how to enumerate different important services through the command line interface in your terminal. We have IAM privilege escalation labs, which is a full learning path of, I think, about 12 to maybe 15, 16 hands-on labs that teach you different privilege escalation attacks specific to IAM, identity and access management. And then we have a few other courses as well. CloudTrail, I'm working on a certification one for the AWS Certified Security Specialty. A whole bunch of stuff that's on the way as well that we can talk about if you want. But so that's just a glimpse of some of the courses and the teacher style that we have.
I love it. And one of the coolest courses, I don't think you mentioned this, but it's about the greatest pen testing company on earth developed a tool called Paku and CloudGoat. And you have an entire course teaching how to do AWS pen testing with Paku, CloudGoat, and ChatGPT. I haven't taken that one yet, but I'm excited to dive into that as well. So we have all these courses. We have all these hands-on labs. Now, I'm going to be honest. When you first reached out, I think it was actually Chris Whitlock who got us connected, And when you first reached out to me and I was looking at Cybr, I assumed, okay, cool platform. It probably costs like most cloud training platforms are looking at, thousands of dollars a year, or I need some crazy enterprise license even to get initial access. Dude, let's talk about the price. If someone wants to sign up right now for a premium subscription, first, what does that premium subscription give them, and what does that cost?
If I had $1 every time somebody told me that I should have charged a lot more, I'm just not interested in that. I want to make this accessible. So to answer your question, right now we're at $12.99 a month for all access to all of our training, including all courses and all hands-on labs. So it gives you full access, no restrictions, no upcharge, no hidden fees, none of that crap. Otherwise, you can also sign up for a yearly account, which is $129 a year. I think that comes out to $10.75 a month or something like that. So I try to make it as affordable as I possibly can. And like I said, that includes literally everything, not only today, but also 6 months from now, 12 months from now. Anything that we add is automatically added to the membership. And so that's on the individual side. We also have multiple B2B or business to business team accounts. And so that varies anywhere from 5 licenses to 40 plus licenses, where businesses will come to us and they'll say, I have a team of say 15, and those 15 need to know how to secure our AWS environments because we're migrating from on-premises. Can you help us with that? And so they can come on and we can give volume-based pricing based on how many licenses they need.
Very cool. We have some questions from the chat on Cybr as itself. So one person asked, Is it newbie friendly? What kind of knowledge, prerequisite knowledge, do you need to begin working through the Cybr courses and labs?
Yeah, fantastic question. My answer to this, currently we're working on adding a little bit more beginner friendly stuff, hopefully over the next 12 months. As of right now, if you're interested in our training, I would recommend being at least familiar with AWS. So you've created an AWS account before, you know roughly what an EC2 instance is, you've heard of VPCs, you've heard of Lambda, things like that. So you're not completely new to AWS. In that case, something like the introduction to AWS security will be a good way for you to upskill. If you don't yet have that AWS experience, then I would recommend a slightly different learning path. For example, starting with something like the Cloud Practitioner. That's a very beginner-friendly one. In fact, it's not necessarily meant to be a technical certification. It was more so meant for marketing, sales reps, and things like that. So that's a good starting point if you're newer to cloud and tech. And then also maybe even looking at something like the AWS Certified Solutions Architect, going through that, building your foundation. Then that's where Cybr can really come in and give you the biggest bang for your buck, the most learning that you can get. But as an asterisk to that, I'm hearing more requests for a little bit more beginner-friendly content. So that's something that we're definitely considering, and we're looking at adding to our content roadmap in the near future.
Very cool. And for those of you who might be noobs, and even if EC2, VPC, if those terms are confusing to you, there's this incredible superpower called ChatGPT. And what I've noticed is I'm trying to learn cloud concepts, cloud things. ChatGPT does a really good job of explaining that, right? Like, what is an EC2? What is a VPC? Asking ChatGPT and just saying, hey, explain it like I'm 5, right? Starting there so you have a high level overview. So even if you're brand new, I think you can get a lot out of Cybr if you just take it slow and research the things you may not be aware of. Honestly, I think that's in some ways the best way to learn, just to dive in and feel overwhelmed, but slowly dig yourself out of that overwhelming hole, only to realize you're in a bigger hole and you're going to always be overwhelmed. Like we talked about that a little bit in the beginning. Another question from over on chat. I need to scroll up to find it, but the question was along these lines: will Cybr ever branch out from AWS? So do you have plans to do Azure, GCP, some of those other cloud platforms?
I get that question all the time. That's why I'm smiling. As of right now, no. Probably yes, but we're looking at minimum a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. And the reason that I say that, I know that's disappointing to a lot of people, but our hyper focus on AWS security is our superpower, is our main competitive differentiator, because I'm not going to water down our training catalog by trying to go multi-cloud too early. I've worked for larger training providers that have expanded too quickly, and it just ends up watering down their training catalog, if I'm being brutally honest. I don't want that. I want Cybr to be able to, you go to Cybr, you know you will get depth in AWS security training. Now, I'm also a realist, and I understand that many people and many organizations need people that at least can bridge the gap between AWS and, say, Azure or Azure GCP, things like that. So I'm also of the firm belief from personal experience that if you master one cloud provider very well, or you get a lot of expertise in that cloud provider, switching to a different one is very easy. You're just looking at slightly different terminology, slightly different configurations, but you already understand how the cloud works. So it's very easy for you to jump back and forth at that point. I've actually seen people struggle a little bit more when they're trying to learn both at the same time, because they might start mixing wires, right? They're like, wait, is that in AWS? Is that in Azure? I can't remember. So long story short, I go on tangents when it comes to multi-cloud, and I apologize for that. But I not for the near term, just because I truly believe that we can, if we focus on AWS security, we can end up having the best AWS security training catalog. And then at that point, we can look at expanding.
Awesome. We got a lot of questions coming through chat, so I'm just gonna keep going through questions there. But one of my own questions, I just stumbled across this, I think last night when I was going through the Cybr platform. You're currently like hiring people to make AWS labs. Is that correct? And if so, can you share with that a little bit with us? Someone might be watching who knows AWS pretty well, and hey, they want to contribute to Cybr by making labs. Talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. As of right now, I've closed the application process just because I want to make sure that I'm able to go through all the candidates and vet them and make sure that we have the right quality and maintain that quality and standard. But if you are interested in that opportunity, feel free to reach out, because we'll probably reopen that at some point in the near future. And so I can have your resume, your LinkedIn profile on hand and document it. So if you know AWS fairly well, right? You're definitely, this is definitely not for somebody that's never touched AWS before, because you have to build CloudFormation or Terraform scripts. So if you don't know what that is, then probably not the right opportunity for you at this time, but we can help you get there. But if you are familiar with CloudFormation, with Terraform, with how to build infrastructure as code templates, and you are curious about building scenarios, fun scenarios where maybe you can compromise the environment, so you purposefully create vulnerabilities and you test that out, you build out the environment. If that sounds really fun to you, please reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn at Christophe Limpalair. Reach out to me via email, Christophe@cybr.com. You can find me on Discord. Basically, I'm fairly easy to find. We even have a contact form on the website. Shoot me a DM. Let me know, hey, I'm interested in this opportunity. Whenever it reopens, please consider me, and I'd love to take a look at that.
So cool. Now, Chris Whitlock had a very specific question. He wants you to talk about cloudsec.cybr.com. And you're not going to be able to see this, but for those of watching on stream, I just pulled it up on the bottom of the screen. So here is the cloudsec.cybr.com. So you have a little bit about context of what Kristoff's going to talk about. But tell us about cloudsec.cybr.com and how that relates to the Cybr platform.
One day I woke up and had a little bit of an epiphany, which is that I've got a massive amount of notes that I've collected over many, many years of working with this stuff that are completely disorganized and that are just sitting there collecting dust, not helping anybody out. I try to take some of that and put it into courses, but creating courses takes a long time. And so I'm trying to create a shortcut to where it's a completely open public repository. Anybody can contribute to it. Tyler, you could literally go today in an hour, create a pull request, and I would have your pull request in production within less than 2 hours. So anybody is open to contribute to it. And that resource is aiming to be multi-cloud. So if you have Azure expertise, Google Cloud expertise, or even if you are working in cloud security right now and you want to provide career path guidance, we have places for that. So as an example, if you go to cloudsec.cybr.com to pull up the website, you can see what I'm talking about. It's just free open resources, text-based, video-based, image-based, cheat sheets. I create a ton of AWS security cheat sheets. All of that is just open and free. So use it how you want to. Hopefully it helps people out. I've already gotten some really good positive feedback on it. So I'm hoping to see it grow a little bit more, and I'm hoping to see more external contributions. And yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Chris. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so cool. And even while you're talking, I had it pulled up on stream, was kind of going through the pages. So people got a glimpse of it. They have the URL, and they can check it out. Now, we have a lot of questions coming in about career stuff, specifically becoming like a cloud engineer. First, what does your typical cloud engineer do in the day-to-day job? Like, what would someone expect in a role like that in AWS in particular?
it really kind of depends on the organization and the architecture that they have. For example, are they still using traditional EC2 instances? And if you're not familiar with EC2, I should have prefaced earlier, EC2, just think of it as your cloud servers, right? You're renting a server in the AWS data centers, and you're able to do whatever you want with that server to a certain extent. So a lot of companies are still running traditional EC2, or maybe they're running containers on AWS through ECS or EKS. Or maybe they're running more serverless, running technologies like Lambda, using everything. And so if you're a cloud engineer, you might be responsible for helping work with architects, helping work with the security team to make sure that the solutions you're deploying fit the business needs. So management might come in, they might have certain requirements. They say, we need to build this out, or we need to migrate all of our current resources from on-premises to the AWS cloud. And you need to do that in 6 months, which is a very aggressive goal. Let's say 12 months, that's maybe a little bit more realistic. Even then, it probably takes longer than that in a lot of cases. As a cloud engineer, you can come in and you can help to figure out how to do that, how to get those services migrated over to AWS in a quick, efficient, cost-effective, and secure way. That's much easier said than done. That takes a lot of time, a lot of planning, a lot of effort. And so it really, really depends. I'm trying to put more resources together to show different paths. So if you have an organization still running on EC2, you want to be a cloud engineer, here's a rough path that you can take that can help you with that role. Or if they're interested in, or if they're running containers, Kubernetes, things like that, here's what you need to learn to be able to get to that role. That's still something I'm very much working on. So hopefully I can give a much more detailed and practical answer to that question. But that's something I definitely want to put a lot of time and effort into, because I don't want to lead people astray. And there's a lot that goes into being a cloud engineer. There's a lot of technology you have to understand and learn.
Good stuff. Now, one of the things I've heard people say about cloud is that it's all a fad, right? And we saw this a little bit, that when cloud came on the scene, a lot of companies did that. They shifted completely to the cloud. But some companies are now realizing, hold up, we spent a bunch of money because we didn't have budgets, we didn't have things in place to prevent us overspending, and it's cheaper for us to move back to on-prem or maybe a hybrid, but with a focus on-prem. So let me just ask you, for those who say cloud is just a fad, I'm going to assume you disagree because you have an entire cloud training platform, but what would you say to that person?
First of all, it's definitely not a fad. If you look at the data, if you look at the stats and the growth pace that AWS, Azure, GCP, and even Alibaba Cloud and some of the other ones have, it's definitely not a fad. It's sticking around. It's going to be here. Many organizations are going to use the cloud in some way, shape, or form. However, I think a lot of them are maybe starting to realize that a hybrid approach is not a bad idea. So maybe instead of transferring everything over, they'll keep some stuff on-prem, some stuff in AWS. And if you look at a lot of the certification material for AWS certs, if you look at a lot of their webinars, their training sessions, all of that, you'll see they have a lot of services and they have a lot of training teaching people how to do that hybrid environment, how to do VPC peering, how to still route traffic correctly, securely, and so on. So hybrid is definitely very important. I think that's a good use case for a lot of larger organizations. I will also say, though, I think in some cases, not always, in some cases, the cost issues that we're seeing are probably in part due to improper training or lack of training, to where as they were implementing solutions, maybe they just didn't look at the architecture closely enough and they didn't realize how much it was going to end up costing them. As an example of that, serverless went back in even 2017, 2018, 2019, serverless, everybody wanted serverless this, serverless that. Serverless is fantastic, has a great place in your tech stack potentially, but I don't think big enterprises in some cases realized how expensive it was going to end up being, because serverless can be extremely expensive. They built everything serverless or a lot of stuff serverless, and now they're like, crap, this is too expensive. We have to go back on-prem. Whereas if they hadn't gone so heavy on the serverless side, maybe the cloud wouldn't be as expensive. So it's a case-dependent answer. Certainly not a fad. I would argue day and night that it is not a fad for sure, or fad.
Good stuff.
Excuse me.
Good stuff. All right, for those of you watching, I am going to drop a link right now for the giveaway. So it's a Google form. It's going to ask for your Discord name and your email. I'm only going to open it for a few minutes. And once again, only those of you watching live right now will be eligible. We are giving away, thanks to Chris Whitlock, 2 3-month premium subscriptions to Cybr to give you a taste for the platform. And then we'll dive back into the interview. But real quick, I'm going to drop this link in all of the platforms. If you're on LinkedIn and you don't see it, it's because LinkedIn sucks with their live stream, and I don't know why it's so broken all the time. So go to YouTube and Twitch if you want to see the link. But I just dropped the link for the Google form, and all 3 platforms. Jump on there and fill it out, and I will be closing that shortly. But back to the interview. Let's put on our blue team hat, because a big thing about being a cloud engineer is, of course, being aware of security issues in the cloud. So as a blue teamer, what are some of the biggest security issues, exploits, misconfigurations that they should be aware of when it comes to AWS? And do you have any guidance or advice on how to detect and remediate those proactively?
One of the biggest issues that I'm hearing from customers, from cloud users over and over again, and also from partners, is how complex and difficult IAM, identity and access management, is. I know I've already mentioned it a couple of times, and also a lot of the live training sessions I've done recently, a lot of the cheat sheets I've done and everything is related to IAM. And there's a reason for that. It's because a lot of teams struggle with identity and access management. It's everything to do with controlling your identities, controlling your access, managing who can do what or what can do what. You've got machines that need access. You've got people that need access. Maintaining that, even with just a few employees, is already very difficult. Now think about it for thousands of employees, for thousands of machines and resources. It becomes a very complex and serious problem. You have resources that are just zombie resources that are just chilling in your accounts. You don't even know they're there. You don't update them. They drift away from their configurations. All of a sudden they become vulnerable, and that's an entry point for a breach. There's also, of course, insider threats, and insider threats are a major problem. So if you don't have proper access control for insider threats and external threats, then you open up your environments to major potential issues and breaches, which we see about or hear about in the news very frequently. So from a cloud security perspective, from a defensive side, I think one of the main challenges that we're currently experiencing and that a lot of vendors are trying to solve for is access control, is identity management, and everything else that revolves around that. And so I'm trying to create more and more training resources. I've got a lot of it on cloudsec.cybr for free as well that focus on that. And so that also kind of bleeds into the red team side, talking about IAM privilege escalation attacks and things like that.
So let's talk about the red team, right? So put on the pen tester hat. That's what I do, is I do pen testing. So for a pen tester, what should they be looking for if they're pen testing an AWS environment, or maybe they're on a web app and they find like an S3 bucket in the source code? What are some just common things they should check as a pen tester when it comes to AWS?
One of the first things, and one of the areas that, again, I'm focusing on a lot because of that, is enumeration, understanding enumeration, and understanding how the services and the APIs work. So for example, you mentioned S3. One of the big issues with S3 is understanding the different types of policies and how you can set permissions correctly. It's so easy to misconfigure either IAM policies or S3 bucket policies to the point where you think it's secure, but it's not. You've got a major gap and you just didn't realize it was there. And so that's the focus of, for example, that IAM Privilege Escalation Labs course that we have. That's the entire focus of that, of helping you think like an attacker and helping you understand how you can, if you get access to, say, access keys, or a console login like username and password or things like that, or maybe you're working for an official pen test or you're a bug bounty hunter or whatever. If you have that initial access, what can you do with that? Even if you start off with very few privileges, what can you do to try and pivot through that environment and see if you can escalate any of your privileges? And a lot of times you don't even need admin access. That's the crazy part of it. A lot of times, even just a little bit of privilege escalation can get you to the point where you can extract S3 data from sensitive buckets. And all of a sudden you have a breach that costs the organization many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, which we've heard about. I won't name names, but you probably know who I'm talking about in some cases. So that's one issue with S3 is there's multiple layers of protection. A lot of times those multiple layers of protection are just simply not configured properly. And if you don't put on your red team or attacker hat on, and if you don't try to attack it from that perspective, then you may think it's secure when in reality it's just not. There's gaps in your security policies. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's excellent. And for those of you watching, this is your like 5-second warning. I'm going to grab all these names real quick and we are going to do the drawing now that we're towards the end of the stream. So this is your last chance. If you have not filled out the form, get it filled out right now because we are going to be doing that giveaway just momentarily. But let's just talk about long-term future at Cybr. You said right now the focus is AWS. You want to get AWS really well to be a premier platform for learning hands-on AWS training, both blue team, red team, purple team, whatever you want to call it. But what does Cybr look like, let's say 5 years from now? Like, are there any big things in the roadmap that you're super excited about that you're also able to share with us?
There are a few things I'm very excited about that I can't share just yet. It's coming soon, probably in the next couple of weeks. So I'll hold my tongue on those. It might slip out. We'll see. But 5 years down the road, that's a really good question. It's a long time. A lot can happen in that time. I think by year 5, we probably will end up being multi-cloud at that point, because we will have had enough time to really build that AWS security catalog and then start working with Azure experts and build out that Azure catalog to the same quality and depth that we expect for the AWS side. So probably looking at something multi-cloud. But I'm obsessed with the idea of improving our platform. It's just not where I want it to be today, right? And I think we're always criticizing our own babies, but in 5 years, I hope that we have even more hands-on capabilities, even more project-based, natively integrated stuff to where it just seamlessly flows. Like, I want to learn about this AWS service today, or how to protect this, or how to do that. You can search through Cybr. You can pick from a couple of different courses. You can go in those courses, and by the end of those courses, you will have the expertise that you can take to your organization or hiring manager or whoever that is. So that's really just, I'm obsessed with the idea of doing that, of just having as much hands-on as we can possibly integrate within our courses and just stay hyper-focused on cloud security as a whole, even 5 years down the road.
I love it. All right, y'all, for those of you watching live on stream, we're going to do the giveaway real quick. Christophe, you won't be able to see this unless you're also watching the stream, but I have an amazing wheel of colors. It's just an online website. You can put in names, and that's how I did it. So for those of you watching, I'm just using your Discord names. The reason I asked for your email, we're not going to spam you. I'm not like even sharing your emails with Christophe or even his team, and I'm definitely not keeping track of your emails myself. That's just so I can reach out to you if you won, and then I'll get you connected with Christophe and Chris, the other Chris, and we'll get those vouchers sent out to you. But once again, this is for 2 3-month premium subscriptions to Cybr. But I will just say, hey, if you don't win, I just bought a premium license myself, the year-long one, for $129. Once again, comes to a little over $10 a month, which I think is like probably the price of a RuneScape membership, now that I'm thinking of it now, if I go back to the RuneScape days, but much more beneficial than a RuneScape membership. But here we go. We have our amazing wheel of colors. Justin Gold said, you're still using this site. Yes, I am, Justin. You get over yourself, bro. All right, we're going to spin the wheel, and we'll pick out 2 winners. Here we go for the first winner. If I had sound effects, I would do a drum roll. And the winner is Marsh Mac. So Marsh Mac, I know you're here because you filled this out. So Marsh Mac, congratulations. I will follow up with you via email, and we will get that voucher sent your way. And we have one more winner. Let's go ahead and spin the wheel. And oh, it was almost Justin Gold. Vinny himself is the winner of the second one. So for those of you who won, I will follow up with you with your email, and we'll get all that information sent over to you. But hey, once again, if you did not win, I would encourage you, support Cybr, support the incredible stuff they're doing, and go and get a month or a year-long license and check out the platform. It really is an incredible platform. Or just make an account and check out all the free resources that are on the site as well before you dive in with your money. But hey, Christophe, before we sign off, just any closing words of wisdom that you have for all of us on this crazy journey of cloud security?
I think I'm going to circle back to one of the initial conversations we were having on here, which is, and I had a full podcast on this, if you're interested in hearing it, with Eric Gimbel was his name, on the Cybr podcast. You go to cybr.com/podcast or pull it up on all the streamers. And he had this problem. Very smart guy. He was part of the Cybr community almost from day one. But I could tell he was really struggling with getting his foot through the door, getting interviews. And so I brought him on the podcast and we talked about this. And he's like, I had FOMO. I needed to learn all these different things that I kept pushing back applying to these jobs. I was like, dude, I know people who have a third of your knowledge and experience who are getting jobs. Why? Because they're applying. They're not waiting. They're doing it. They're applying for the job. And look, I know a lot of people are struggling with job applications right now. This was a couple of years back, so the job market has changed quite a bit. I will preface with that. But the fact being that don't get overwhelmed by how much there is to learn. Try to figure out what you love and what you're interested in, and then kind of drill down on that, focus in on that. And I think that will help just remove that feeling of overwhelm, and also that feeling of being burnt out. I know way too many people who are burning out on this industry because they're trying to do too much. So you got this. I know it's a weird job market right now. Hopefully it's just something that's going to correct at some point. I'm sure it is. I'm a firm believer that you just have cycles and you have to ride those cycles. You got this. If I can do anything to help, DM me in the community. I'm always there to help as much as I can, or I try to find people who can help you if it's something that I can't help you with. So also, Tyler, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I learned a lot from the conversation, so I'm sure those of you watching also learned a lot from it. And hey, if you're watching after the fact, thank you for stumbling across this video, and hopefully you learned something about cloud security. But hey, y'all, thank you for being here.